All right, this unit we are talking about reproduction, human reproduction in particular. So this lecture is just going to go over the anatomy and a little bit more. You have your worksheet that you're coloring that goes over the parts and the functions, but this way you'll have some really clear and concise notes to go along with those. So first of all, the functions of the reproductive system. Overall, we want to produce offspring. Our goal is to pass on our genes to the next generation. The roles or the functions of reproductive systems are a little bit different in men than women. So the male system, the goal is to produce and deliver sperm. That contribution is done. They've passed on their genes. And then the female system is a little bit more complicated. They produce eggs, which have half the genetic material that will get passed on to the offspring. But then they also provide an environment or a place for that fertilized egg to develop. So as far as like energy expenditure, it's much greater for women than men in humans, and actually most animals. So I'll just kind of uncover the arrows here on the male anatomy. You have your own diagram, but that way you have a couple different views of male anatomy. I'm just going to uncover all of these. Feel free to pause the video at this point if you want to go over these parts in a little bit more detail. There are some parts here, including the bladder, rectum, and anus, which are not part of the reproductive system, but since we've just taken kind of a slice through this guy, we're seeing those parts as well, and we see the tailbone and the vertebrae peeking in there as well. So I'm going to go over the functions of the male reproductive system. The scrotum, it's just a sac that is holding the testes. It's on the outside of the body to keep the sperm slightly cooler than air temperature. And there we have it. The testes are within the scrotum and they are producing sperm. One thing to note is that sperm do have to develop in an environment that's slightly cooler than room temperature. So if men are sitting with laptops on their laps for long periods of time, the laptops often get really warm. They can actually reduce their sperm count. The epididymis is just a little tube that leads away from the testes. Immature sperm are going to go from the testes into the epididymis. This is where they're going to mature. That's actually where they grow their tails. And then the sperm are going to go on to the vas deferens, which is just an extension of that tube. And the sperm are just going to hang out here until they're needed. So sperm can be stored in the vas deferens for up to 3 months. A little bit more about sperm development. The sperm are the sex or male sex cells. They are relatively simple and very small cells. Because they are so small and simple, it doesn't take a lot of energy to make sperm. So men can make up to 300 million sperm every day. There are 3 main parts to sperm. There's the head, which basically just houses the nucleus with all the DNA. There's this midsection where there's mitochondria, and the mitochondria are going to produce energy for the sperm, and then of course the tail, which is like a big flagellum, that's going to propel this sperm through the female body to get to the egg. So the energy is really important for propelling that tail and getting that sperm going. The sperm produce their heads in the testes, and then, like I said, they grow their tails in the epididymis. And then as they leave the male body, they might be hanging out in the vas deferens for a while, but eventually they do leave. They're going to pick up a couple secretions on their way out. So the seminal vesicles are going to secrete a sugar mixture. That sugar mixture is going to help provide energy for that sperm so it can use its mitochondria and do cellular respiration and make ATP. The prostate gland is going to secrete an alkaline fluid. Alkaline is basic. It's like the opposite of an acid. That's going to help protect the sperm from female fluids. Our bodies are slightly acidic, and the sperm don't like that acidic environment. So to help them survive that a little bit better, they come with this alkaline fluid that will help neutralize that environment for them. And then the bulbourethral gland also secretes a fluid. Its real function is to lubricate and cleanse the urethra. Because men only use a single opening for both excretion of urine and for excretion of their sperm and other fluids, this helps cleanse the urethra before the sperm leave. When we have the sperm along with fluids combined, we just call that semen. So semen does include sperm, but it has all these secretions. So when a man is aroused, the sperm will leave the vas deferens where they've been stored. They're going to move towards the urethra, picking up those three fluids along the way, and then from the urethra they will leave the body. When that semen is ejected, it's just called ejaculation. There are smooth muscle contractions, basically peristalsis, that is occurring within the penis to push that semen out. This is not a voluntary action. All smooth muscle contractions are involuntary. And during that ejaculation, between 2 and 6 milliliters of semen is released. And if you think about those little plastic pipettes we use in class, those can hold up to about 3 milliliters of semen. So that gives you an idea of how much fluid is being released. So I'll do the same thing with the female anatomy. I'll just uncover these labels, and you can pause if you need to take a look at that for a little bit longer. As a reminder, the rectum and the anus are not involved with reproduction, neither are the bladder and urethra, but they are included in this photo. If you're wondering what this little thing is, that's just the pubic bone. So the ovaries, we do have 2 ovaries, one on each side. That is where our eggs are produced. And then kind of the little tubes leading away from the ovaries are the oviducts. They're sometimes also called fallopian tubes. And they're going to transport the eggs from the ovaries to the uterus. And again, because you have 2 ovaries, you have 2 oviducts. We will talk about fertilization in a couple days. But fertilization actually occurs within the oviducts. The uterus is where that fertilized egg will eventually develop if it is fertilized. There are 2 layers to the uterus. The outer layer is muscular, and then there's a thin lining on the inside. That lining changes throughout the month, throughout our menstrual cycles. And so it is shed if an egg isn't fertilized. If you get menstrual cramps at all, it's because of that muscle. That muscle is helping get rid of that material from that inner lining as you shed it. The cervix is at the base of the uterus, so it's just the opening to the uterus. It is a round muscle, and that's going to lead to the vagina, which we can also think of as the birth canal or the passage to the outside, or if you're thinking it from the other way, it's the passage to the inside. All right, that concludes our notes on the parts of the reproductive system. I encourage you to look at the resources on the blend space as well to learn a little bit more about the male and female anatomy and the functions of all the parts.